Bakugou's heart pounded in anticipation, his mind racing. In his right hand was a heavy briefcase. The two figures before him, a large bag of muscles and a lanky guy with thick glasses, smoking a cigarette, also wielding a clean metal box, stood before him. The brute cracked his knuckles, while the other simply looked in the blonde's direction. Quietly, the three men approached each other. Air heavy with the smell of a soon encroaching thunderstorm. The alley the men were in was covered in a thick layer of grime. Forgotten graffitis just barely able to shine through the moldy dirt covering them. When Bakugou was only mere inches away from the man with the glasses clouded by condensation from the long wait, he blew sickly smelling smoke into his face. The blonde's eye twitched in anger before the other offered the box he was holding. The exchange was quick, neither man saying a word to each other. The glasses guy took another drag of a cigarette before giving the briefcase to his friend. With a hungry expression, the brute opened the package. His eyes widened with the joy of a sex offender let loose in a sorority filled to the brim with passed-out, drunk, underage cheerleaders. The man nodded in Bakugou's direction, allowing him to leave without further incident. He walked up to his motorcycle, opening a compartment on its side, securing the box before jumping on the seat. Night City was a metropolis riddled in crime and disaster. Despite that, it still had the title of the City of Dreams. And the reason was simple. If you could survive the dregs of humanity and the ghettos, the humiliation from the upper corpos, and the countless shootouts, you could work yourself up the ladder of command. This was the only place in America where a Zero could enter the big leagues in a single night. Bakugou drove through the artificially illuminated streets at a high speed, the wind calming through his hair like the cool touch of a banshee. His breathing was short, as the polluted air forced itself down into his nostrils. His goal was a nightclub called Religion Zero, run by the Maelstrom gang. The criminal organization consisted mostly out of heavily modified cybernetic fetishists on the verge of something called cyberpsychosis. They reveled in the feeling of death and destruction, yet somehow managed to run a tightly knit crime syndicate. Bakugou stopped his motorcycle at the club's front entrance. He decided to go through the back door as to not give himself too much attention. Bakugou pounded against the metal door. A slit was opened and a pair of red glowing eyes stared at him through the small hole. They narrowed, yet still opened the door for him. Quietly he was led inside. The club music was blaring, instantly causing him to get a headache. The lights in the club were seizure-inducing, and the zombie-esque people on the dance floor rapidly moved in the grotesque neon abyss. The air was filled with the sickeningly sweet smell of sweat, alcohol, and drugs. Bakugou wanted to leave this place as fast as possible. The Maelstrom goon guided him to an elevator, stepping next to him. He breathed heavily like a predator next to its prey, ogling him curiously. Bakugou, however, only stared daggers back into the man. The elevator opened 4 minutes later. The glass hallway Bakugou found himself in was illuminated by aggressive white neon lights on the floor. They led to a black wooden door that didn't fit with the neon cyber aesthetic of the club. The goon practically kicked Bakugou inside before slamming the door shut, laughing maniacally as he did so. The blonde found himself inside of the office of the man who hired him. A man, only known as Bronze, sat behind an expansive-looking table. He was a fat mountain of a man. His skin was sickly gray and covered in sores, teeth yellow, eyes bloodshot. Out of his back hung multiple tubes that were attached to his heavy chair, that had more similarities to a throne rather than an office equipment. He greeted Bakugou with a dirty laugh. Outside of this mountain of meat, there were 3 dolls with him. High-class whores who used cybernetics to temporarily switch off their minds with that of an AI to make them obedient to any order they would receive by their patrons. Maelstrom was widely known for using these women as messengers, personal sex toys, and servants. With a blank stare and a sarcastic remark was the box taken from Bakugou by one of the dolls. She placed it on her boss's table, who opened it with his tiny twitching hands. Inside were 4 green vials, roughly the size of a football. Impatiently, Bronze took one of them and slotted them into a compartment on his chair's armrest. The green liquid flowing from the tubes into his body. The fat mass convulsed in drugged-up pleasure, while grabbing a bag from under his table, throwing it at Bakugou. The blonde inspected it, only to be greeted with nothing. He knew what this gesture meant. Proving his quick thinking ability, he threw the bag at one of the dolls' faces and kicked down the door, as Bronze ordered his minions to fire at him. Bakugou's heart almost exploded as he sprinted through the corridor, as the noises of submachine gun fire made his eardrums ring in pain. Readying himself, he jumped against the hallway's glass window, breaking it, throwing himself into the crowd of people below him. Screams echoed through the club as glass shards rained upon the patrons. Down here, the music was even more unbearable, and most of the people around him didn't even seem to notice what was happening. Too heavy was the intoxicating smell of drugs inside the establishment. Bakugou didn't know how. He didn't know when. But somehow he found himself on his motorcycle again, driving through the night. He could feel his body's adrenaline levels go down. And when the clock of his bike hit 3 a.m., he finally stopped. His legs hurt, but he had to press on for one last message. He knew his time in Night City was over. Slowly he walked up to a payphone, throwing in a coin, dialing an oh so familiar number. You are sitting next to a window of your small apartment, looking down at the glowing city below you as rain began to bang against the glass. Your boyfriend had left you for one of his gigs. He had been trying to enter the big leagues for a while now, blinded by his ambitions, to how it made you feel. Worry and sadness filled your mind almost every night. so when your phone rang, you instantly picked it up. The man on the other end didn't even let you say a single word. "Baby," he said. It was Bakugou. You smiled hearing your boyfriend's voice, yet were instantly crushed by the meaning of his words. "I need to leave. The less you know, the better. I will not come back, and I don't expect you to follow me. Don't wait for me, because I will never return." You narrowed your eyes in pain as tears rolled down your face. You didn't understand, at least not fully. You knew he was a drug runner, and that much was clear. And you knew this call was not to break up, but a necessity to protect your life. Such is the life of a mercenary. You had often wondered how often he was on the other end of a gun, and how often he was the one holding it. But this was it. He hung up, not letting you speak a single word. Looking at your own reflection, you could see the tears that were ruining the bit of makeup you had put on. It took you a minute of frantic thinking until you decided to redial the number, only to be greeted by ringing with no one answering. You wallowed in your own sadness for a bit, unable to contain your emotions. You threw a fit, banging your feet and fists on the ground, screaming into your pillows and punching the walls until your knuckles were bleeding. Out of breath, and with a sore throat, you stared at your hands. You had made a decision. At this time of night, only one checkpoint to the outskirts was open. If he really was leaving, it was through that gate. Forgoing all rational thought, you grabbed a leather jacket from your cabinet, took your wallet, keys to your own bike, and stormed out of the apartment. Your tears were soon washed away by the wind and rain as you drove at a breakneck speed through the streets of Night City. And then it happened. For only a fraction of a second, you locked eyes with a biker next to you. Instantly, you recognized those crimson eyes and blonde hair. Both of you came to a shrieking halt. Jumping off your machines, you ran towards each other. You embraced him. "Bakugou," you whispered softly. His hand combed through the back of your wet hair. Both of you were cold from the rain, yet steaming from the rush of the moment. Silently, he held onto you, caressing your barely clothed form, having waited for him in your lingerie. "We need to go," he spoke. You pushed your bike next to his, and simultaneously, the two of you started your engines, pushing forward through the rain to the border. Driving past the waiting carts and Driving past the waiting cars and guards into the desert beyond. You stopped at a seedy motel, the gruff man behind the counter only having scoffs and growls for the two of you as he gave you the keys to your room. Inside was a dirty carpet. The bathroom door hung on its hinges, unable to close. The TV was smashed. Yet somehow, despite the bed's stains, It didn't seem to be infested with insects. Not even crumbs were on it, as if the underpaid maid of the place had the motto of making the bed the cleanest place in the room. Not that either of you cared. A few empty glass bottles were inside the shower that you quickly put into the sink before letting lukewarm water cascade over your naked frame. Bakugou was behind you, his arms wrapped around you, kissing your neck and shoulder passionately. Using a somewhat clean towel, you dried each other before he led you to the bed. His kisses, touches, and hitched breaths were as needy as ever. And when the first rays of the morning sun awoke both of you, you had but one question on your mind. What now? He looked at you with a confident smile. This is all the Kaldos territory, he said. So, we're becoming nomads then? You asked curiously. Or we could drive off to the new Republic of Texas. I have family there. He paused and kissed your forehead. Either way, as long as I'm with you, I know I have the determination to keep going. I love you.